It's amazing that I'm going to talk about the antithesis of Donovan Clingan tonight. Donovan Clingan is 7'2", Joey McGinn was 5'2". But he had just as much impact, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. It's also, I want to talk about, and the reason why we have the Joe McGinn Award, it's really because it puts perspective. I mean, you folks have all spent a lot of time working hard. You've had great success. How would you like to have an ailment that did not make that possible, or would not make that possible? And that's kind of what happened with Joey. So in lieu of me just telling the story, I was going online and I came up with an article by Bill Plaschke that was in the Los Angeles Times, I believe. And ironically, it's entitled, let me get to it, UConn Believed in the Leprechaun. So again, please indulge me. He had requested vacation for a special weekend more than a year ago, even though his team had never made the Final Four. Connecticut gave Joey McGinn a reason for hope. He had traveled to the Big East tournament earlier that month with his wheelchair and a suitcase packed with dialysis equipment. Connecticut gave him a reason to cheer. When the NCAA tournament brackets came out, he eagerly readied his lucky blue cap, his gray sweatshirt, his stuffed husky, and the grueling trip to St. Petersburg, Florida. Connecticut gave him courage. Can Connecticut figure out a way to beat Duke? Even though both teams are still 40 minutes from a possible national championship showdown on Monday night? That's the question everybody's asking. Connecticut knows one thing. Joe McGinn would have figured out a way to beat Duke. You think of him and you want to leave everything you have on the court. Because he would, said guard Ricky Moore. Just thinking of him, said Jake Voskel, gives me goosebumps. He paused, pointed to his bare legs, and sure enough, there they were, the point as any eulogy. You see, he said, he's with the team right now. Back in Bristol, his mother had chills for a different reason. I can't believe they are saying those things, she said. Of course, our own son is very special to us, but to hear able-bodied kids saying that he inspired them. Today, those kids wear a black patch on their jersey in McGinn's memory. He was 5'2", 118 pounds with red hair. He was diagnosed with kidney disease at age 3 and eventually stopped growing, but never stopped dreaming. In 6th grade, he was so convinced he was going to be the next Michael Jordan, he signed Jordan's name to all his homework. During a week, the substitute was there. When the school finally figured it out, the principal called Michael Jordan to the office, and McGinn begrudgingly surrendered. The first milestone in his life was a kidney transplant at age 16. The second was meeting Calhoun during a visit to Connecticut basketball game when he was a senior in high school. And here he was introduced by Steve Peichel. I'm sure you all know who Steve Peichel is. Steve Peichel is a great player in Bristol at St. Paul and went on to UConn. And of course, he coached Cam Spencer, who's part of that team, great team at UConn this year. When the team won that night, Calhoun took a liking to McGinn. He was like their leprechaun, said his mother. And 2 years later, he transferred from Northeastern to become Calhoun's manager at Connecticut. The next 3 years of his life were perhaps the best ones. He did everything from grab towels to practice charts to give encouragement. He felt normal, his mother said. All his life, he wanted to just be normal. And that is exactly how Jim Calhoun treated him. He would sometimes take a buddy down to the empty Campo Pavilion court after practice, and they would bounce balls up and down and pretend they were the stars that Joey always hoped to be, wish he would be. The players became not only his job, but his family. If you were hurt, Joe was the one person who would always stay by your side, pushing you to come back and not giving up on you, senior guard Rashmore Jones said. He was sick, but he only cared about you. Even though his transplant medication caused rare side effects, it made him increasingly sicker. In his senior year, the week before the annual celebration in which senior Huskies and their families were introduced to the games, McGinn underwent major kidney surgery. He didn't leave the hospital until 2 days before the game, and nurses predicted he would not be strong enough to attend. But he said no way. He was not going to miss it for anything, recalled his mother. His sister put on his suit and shoes, His parents helped him to the car. Together they walked on the pavilion floor that night with such stars as future NBA player Ray Allen. And the loudest cheers were for Ray Allen, of course, said Sheila McGinn. I was so proud of my son, but I mean, compared to the other players, he was just a pipsqueak. If she only knew. I told her mother all those years I cheated her, Calhoun said. She talked about us giving him courage and inspiration. Those are the things I got from Joe. Never more than last spring, 3 years after Joe McGinn graduated, when he was faced with the amputation of both legs because of the complications with his transplanted kidney. During this time, away from school, he had taken a job at graphics department at ESPN, where he still came to many home games and still hung out in the locker room. He was one of those guys you just wanted to be around. The players loved him. They were used to seeing him. Even after he left, he was always there for them. And then it came time for McGinn to make his decision about the amputations. Calhoun was there for him, in the hospital room, just the two of them. Joey never did tell what Coach Calhoun told him, said his mother. McGinn agreed to the double amputation, and he cried. Calhoun cried. And the last year of his life was about to adjust. He hated having to sit in a wheelchair section, his mother said. He didn't want much. All he wanted to be was normal. Walk around, do things like other people did. Calhoun and McGinn grew ever closer, speaking frequently on the phone about recruits and their injuries and merely gossip. When Joey would go to a game, afterward, Coach would walk from the reporters to talk to him, recalling his buddy, Dave Polachano. The two shared something special. Calhoun took his team to see McGinn in the hospital after the operation. The first thing Joey did was holler at Richard Hamilton for even thinking about turning pro before his junior year. When he showed up at the Big East tournament this year, the team was happy and relieved. They were even more excited and loudly ripped St. John's. That's kind of ironic that it's beat them two games ago, right? It was so good to see him. As sick as he was, still fighting, Jones said. It made all of us really think. But then his transplanted kidney had deteriorated such that he was undergoing dialysis 4 times a day. He and Polachano even performed the procedure in his hotel room in New York in the Big East tournament so he could attend the games. We didn't know it at the time, but that was his last hurrah. After Connecticut whipped St. John's to win the tournament, McGinn, the first one to call Calhoun when the NCAA pairings came out. They talked for 20 minutes like old buddies. Talked about the brackets, but they always did, his mother said. 2 days later, after returning from the doctor with a note that he could return to work, McGinn suffered a heart attack in bed during the middle of the day, dying in his mother's arms. The team was just landed in Denver to begin the NCAA tournament. During a meeting in Ricky Moore's room, they were given the news. Everyone broke down. His body had been fighting for so long, you just finally couldn't fight anymore, Calhoun said. Because the team could not fly back for the funeral, the Huskies attended a special only team memorial at the nearby Air Force Academy. Calhoun sent his parents the Big East Championship watch, and it was put on Joey's wrist for the burial. Little else said until Saturday, when the memory of Joe McGinn came pouring out with the sweat of many victories of their lives. Then on March 9th, the large heart inside of Tiny McGinn, the 26-year-old former Connecticut basketball manager, suddenly stopped forever. Saturday night, his mother was preparing to write a thank you note to the school when the phone rang. Imagine her surprise at the voice of Jim Calhoun, whose team had just defeated Gonzaga to qualify for the first Final Four and fulfill her son's late dream. Imagine her surprise when he told her their son's picture was posted in the locker room. When he told her their son's name was the first thing mentioned during the post-game speech. Although nobody can figure out who sent it, it wasn't me, said his mother, Sheila. Immediately after the first thing called, this one's for Joe. And then he made the phone call to Bristol. Your son will be there in St. Petersburg with us, he said, his parents. He'll have the best seat in the house. Right there underneath the jersey, right in front of his parents, who are being flown to Florida by Calhoun to take their son's place. That was the pipsqueak. If any of you finished the game or remember the game back then, 1999, that was UConn's first championship. In St. Petersburg, the first time they ever won, they beat Duke. I think it was 77-74. And afterward, a book was written by Jim Calhoun, or about Jim Calhoun, and the title of it is Dare to Dream. How appropriate for all of us to dare to dream. And Joey, obviously, that's what he did. And that's why we have a legacy for Joey, because all of you are dreaming about your next step, what you're going to do. All of your parents, obviously, have worked very hard to bring you to the spot you are now. So take advantage of it. One last thing. What happens at the end of the game when the team wins a tournament? What do they do? Climb the ladder and what? Cut down the nets, right? The picture on the front of the book is Jim Calhoun cutting down the net, and he leaves one string on the net, and he says, that was for Joey. So again, I didn't mean to put a damper on this fine affair. I just wanted to put things in perspective, because obviously it's a very cheerful night, and it should be a cheerful night. But just remember, okay, there are others out there who would love to be in your shoes and be able to do what you can. And whenever you're ready to give up on something, don't give up. Make sure you hang in there and do the best you can do. So thank you very much.